I don't know. We're live now.
Big
Hey
big
guys,
banner.
welcome to another episode of Reels and Heels. As you see, it's usually Brian and Nicole, and I'm here by myself today. Today's topic: Godzilla and Kaiju. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. Growing up in the '80s, probably the first movie that I seen was Godzilla 1984. Let's hop into my intro, and then we'll introduce everyone. And all right, I still love that intro. Our friend Paul created that intro for our show. And like I said, today's Godzilla. And so we're going to go around our round table here and everybody introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Darius.
Hey guys, it's Darius McDaniel from Baltimore. I'm back again on the show. I enjoyed my time last time, so it's good to be back and talking Godzilla, one of my favorite kaijus.
Tom, go ahead.
Tom Hutchinson. I'm a writer, publisher for Big Dog Inc. Comics. It's my first time on the Reels and Heels, but we've been doing this video thing through the COVID, so I think we're all kind of used to it now. Hopefully we'll have a good time.
And Marc?
Hey guys, my name is Marc Lee, and I host a show called Saturday Morning Cartoons. Excuse me, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. I'm also a convention moderator. I'm one of DragonCon's pro moderators. I've been moderating around the world, conventions around the world for the last 35 plus years. Don't want to date myself.
And super special guest, so honored to have him, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett.
Thank you very much. I'm a filmmaker here in Los Angeles, but I've had a lifelong love affair with kaiju films. The first one I actually ever saw was Rodan, which I still think is I still think it's my favorite, only because it made such an impression on me when I was a little kid, because Rodan is not just a kaiju movie, but it's also a great horror movie. And the beginning of it's really, especially for a kid, dark, really scary. It's gnarly. And I loved it. And that's where my love affair began.
I haven't seen Rodan in years, but
so good.
Yeah, it is so good. I'm kind of iffy if we get a US version of Rodan, because I know they've kind of talked about it, but I know they threw him into King of Monsters, but I would like to see an updated version. Just it's still iffy on it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing anything for a while here. I mean, Toho's made it very clear that they're ready to do their own big cinematic connecting thing, and generally they don't like overlapping American elements at the same time. So I think whatever we're going to get with Kong versus Godzilla, it might be it for American audiences for a little while, as far as the Toho verse goes.
Yeah. So you said Rodan was your first venture into this, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Seattle, and on Sundays at 2:00 on Sunday afternoons, there was Sci-Fi Theater, and they showed a very heady mix of science fiction films, and you never knew what you were going to get. Mm-hmm. And I was already a fiend. I mean, Star Trek was always my thing, but I mean, I also love the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits. So I started young, and like when I was 6 years old, 5 and 6, I saw War of the Worlds on Sci-Fi Theater, and it turned me into a maniac. But then Rodan was, if people haven't seen Rodan, it starts out as a mystery where these miners are disappearing in this mine, and this one guy comes out, and he's like shell shocked. He can't speak. And then you kind of see a flashback of what he discovers, and he finds larvae, the young creatures, and it's done as I probably shouldn't have been watching it because I was too young, but it was terrifying at first, and then of course it turns into Rodan emerges, and there's actually two of them, and it's full on. Rodan's destroying cities with his supersonic or her supersonic flight, and then the two of them, the two creatures, they die in the lava of Mount Fuji at the end.
Oh, so spoiler alert, man!
I know, right? And it's into this sad thing. So as a kid, it was one of the first movies that I ever saw that I remember having an emotional response to. Like at first, I was really scared. Then it becomes cool because there's giant monsters, and then at the end, there's deep sadness, and I took it very seriously. And this was like the first Godzilla. It was serious, man, and I hadn't seen like Godzilla's Revenge yet, or I hadn't seen any of those films. So in my mind, the first experience I had with a kaiju movie was this emotional roller coaster that really left an impact on me. So I always took the genre seriously, even when it sometimes wasn't.
What about you, Mark? When was your first taste in the kaiju world?
I think my first theatrical kaiju movie was, I think it was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. I think I saw that in the theater. I remember that, and for some bizarre reason, my when I was old enough to go to movies by myself, I had, and this, if you want to call this a kaiju, I guess you can. Anybody remember the movie? I'm gonna get this so wrong. So help me on this. Was it Godzilla versus Smog?
Yeah,
the Smog monster. Yeah,
versus the Smog monster. Yeah, that I think had an emotional effect on me because people were literally dissolving on screen. As Smog flew over and whatever, and you see these people's faces melting and all. I'm like, okay. I was afraid to breathe the air anymore after that. But I think it was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla was probably my first theatrical movie. And then we started getting them Saturday afternoons on television, UHF channel, where it would be Ultraman and whatever the Godzilla of the week movie was then.
Yeah.
So, you see them repeat itself, throughout your lifetime after you've seen it the first time, because they never stopped.
No.
And it's funny that you mentioned Ultraman. Didn't Godzilla actually make an appearance on that show, but it wasn't Godzilla?
Yeah, and I don't know what that was. I couldn't explain it to you, but
they put a Dilophosaurus cone on his head and send him off.
Right.
We would be remiss if we didn't mention that July 10th was the 54th anniversary of Ultraman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I still enjoy Ultraman, and I always saw myself as what was the Science Patrol guy's name? Hayati? Anybody?
I don't remember.
His mild-mannered self. He was a member of the Science Patrol.
Yeah.
Hayati? Oh, whatever. It's a Google thing.
What about you, Tom? When did all this start for you?
Super young. My initial Godzilla memories are very weird because I have two specific distinct ones. The one was, I remember King Kong versus Godzilla.
Oh yeah,
was coming on TV, and I remember seeing the commercials for it. While we watched something else prior to it coming on TV with my parents, when it was time for King Kong versus Godzilla, they decided that was the moment where they were going to tell me they were getting a divorce.
Oh man!
So the weird part is I was less concerned about that as I was that I wasn't getting to watch the movie.
Wow.
So it was a very weird experience. But then my next experience with Godzilla, which is half the reason I'm wearing the Gigan shirt, is I remember very vividly watching this at my dad's place after the divorce, and I at the time I had no idea that this was reused footage or anything. This was just, dude, there's like 4 monsters and there's comic books and there's alien cockroaches, and like this is the coolest thing like ever. And it really, and now with me, with me writing my own comics, I can track myself probably all the way back to Godzilla versus Gigan. And find everything that I do now came directly from that.
Wow. I should be afraid.
And what about you, Darius? When was your first taste?
Oh, well, in terms of kaiju, I think it was Power Rangers. honestly,
Wow.
because I was born in '94, so it's like
What?
my first taste of just I'm only 25.
Oh my
turning
God.
26.
Oh,
So
We're
my
in high
first
school,
taste was
Was
So
that
my
the
first
first
taste was-
Power Rangers? Was that the first series
Well,
of Power?
the first series aired in '93 because I'm a huge Power Ranger fan. So the first series aired in '93, but the first series I vividly remember watching was Zeo, which aired in about '95.
Mhm.
So, or maybe '96. It was '96. So Zeo aired in '96, and the movie came out in '95. But I didn't watch the movie actually until '97. So that was kind of like seeing Ivan Ooze, like, turn into this robotic creature, and then you see the Megazord comes in, and I'm like, okay, this is wild, but this is crazy. The CGI was bad back then, and even watching it now, I was like, ooh, this was cringeworthy. But then I think after that, it was I had my taste of Ultraman, and then Gridman, and then here it was Samurai Cyber Squad. So kind of just like in Tokusatsu, because Kaiju is kind of a subgenre of Tokusatsu. So just
Right.
my kind of intake of Kaiju was started through Tokusatsu, not necessarily through Godzilla. But I finally saw my first Godzilla movie, which was I think Godzilla 2000,
oh wow.
and that was the one with Matthew Broderick. And
Yeah.
That's 98.
Or was-
That's the American.
Yeah, the
98.
98.
Yeah,
The Roland Emmerich
98.
version.
Right.
Yeah, the Roland
Roland Emmerich.
exactly. So that was the first one where I don't remember is like it was a whole bunch of rain. I was like, are we going to see Godzilla, or is it just going to be like?
It's fine that you don't remember it. Just let those
Yeah,
memories
that's true.
wash away with the rain.
The
Yeah.
best version of that
Yeah,
Godzilla is in Godzilla Final Wars.
Yes.
When the alien when the CG version fights the man in the suit version, and the alien says, "I knew that salmon eating iguana was worthless," or something. It was great.
Oh, that was like the best 20 seconds.
One of my best movie going experiences was seeing seeing Godzilla Final Wars. They showed it on Hollywood Boulevard, and they brought the cast to I don't know why they did this, and the cast was very formally dressed, like the women in the movie were in traditional kimonos, and the audience was really rowdy, and everybody, it was all the LA film people that were also movie geeks, and we'd all turned out, and it was every monster battle, people literally were like on their feet screaming in the theater. And
Which
I think
theater was this?
it was at the man's Chinese theater, the famous. And what was so crazy about it was I kind of felt bad because I don't think the Japanese, it was all the stars of the film, and I don't think they were quite understanding of what was happening. And of course, everybody roared and loved it. And they spoke afterwards, and it was crazy. But I don't think they really understood that we all brought our childlike sense of wonder, even though we were all, when did it come out? 15 years ago or something? And it was full thing was it was one of the most fun times I ever had in a movie theater. And it was awesome. I mean, it was like being at a wrestling event or something. It was the best.
Man, I would have loved to be there in that environment because I love Final Wars. I love that whole series that started off with Millennium and then on to Final Wars. I love the redesign of Gigan.
Yeah.
I thought it was more up to par with the times. Compared to the original, and the original one didn't really come off as a cyborg as much to me. But that just remembering that scene in Australia when Zilla, as they called it, shows up, man, Godzilla just comes like, I'm not taking this shit, and whacks him with the tail, and he goes flying into the
right in the opera house.
Yes.
I always wondered how Gigan picked his nose. I mean, I'm sure he gave himself a hemorrhage by doing that, but it's like, man, this guy can't basically do anything. I mean, how does he eat? Well, I guess he stabs his food like a fork or a knife or something like that, and eats that way. I mean, how does he scratch his butt? Well, I mean, it'd be painful if he did, but I'm just going off topic here. But anyway.
So let's go ahead and talk about the original, which was 1954.
Yep.
Raymond
Raymond Burr.
Brilliant. Well, that was the 56 version. The 54.
Oh, the 54 version. Okay, I'm sorry.
Right. The whole statement of that film was totally, I don't know, I guess this is the right term, anti-American. The original.
I think it's pretty much the right term. I mean, a response to being the only country that's ever had two nuclear bombs dropped on it.
Well, and I don't know if it was anti-American, if not more so, let's not piss America off again, otherwise they'll drop a bomb on us. So I think it was sort of like, a war guilt. It's like, this is the result of, nuclear bombs if we don't be nice to the right country. And the result, of course, in the cinematic world was basically this giant monster that still destroys, because in the beginning, when Godzilla started, it was basically the destruction, of course, Tokyo being the victim, is basically the destruction of humanity at that time, which was in relation to years earlier where, they thought that it was going to be the destruction of humanity with the dropping of the bomb. So I don't think it was anti-American. It was more like, oh crap, we effed up, and let's make a movie about we effing up, My take on it.
Well, it's definitely anti the bomb for sure.
Right.
I mean, it was very like, look, this is what the bomb does. All these really dramatic scenes of, radiation burns and all that kind of stuff. So it was very anti the bomb, but we also happened to be the ones with the bomb. So it was sort of tangential to that. But I think there's definitely a thought process, like you just talked about, of people have these things. We got to be careful who we piss off. I mean, that's a legitimate thing too. I mean, that's the Cold War. We got to be careful if we get which side is going to get pissed off and push the button first.
Right.
So yeah, no, there's definitely layers to that.
Yeah, and as a reminder, they create Godzilla, which was based on nuclear radiation anyway. And throughout the years, or literally throughout the decades, it seemed like a constant reminder to Japan, hey, let's not do what we did before, which was basically start a war.
Right. And then the Japanese, prior to that, they didn't really have any giant monster movies that I remember. I don't know if someone...
I can't think of one. I thought Godzilla was the king,
Well, was Kong the first true kaiju?
Well, I think it was the Lost World.
Yeah.
Sure, but those are like dinosaurs. No. I mean, Kong is just a
Tom's right, because we're talking, for Kong, we're talking 1933.
Right.
And there were really no giant monsters before 1933 Kong either. So I would agree with you, Tom, that was probably the first original kaiju. Yeah. 20 years later comes up, Godzilla, but still, Kong was the big, monster creature.
But that brings up an interesting question in terms of philosophically. King Kong was more of a Beauty and the Beast kind of a story, and it was dealing with sort of the natural order of things and maybe humanity encroaching into the natural world, and we shouldn't have been, and the results of that would end up as being tragic. Whereas, I think that the kaiju films there's something going on. Like I've always loved, there's something that is not American, I should say not Western, in the kaiju genre that I don't. I've thought about this a lot, and I still don't have a real handle on it. And I there's a certain sense of whimsy and a certain sense of something different, which is why I don't think Americans have nailed the genre yet. And I don't know what that really is, what that difference is.
For those of us that are, older than Darius, okay, we never heard of the word kaiju until the 2000s. Okay, I mean, even in '98, I don't think Matthew Broderick's Godzilla was considered a kaiju then. I basically heard of the term kaiju probably around the time of Pacific Rim. And I'm like, Kaiju, what the hell's a Kaiju? Although I grew up on Godzilla, I grew up on Kong, I grew up on Ultraman and things of that nature. And the Japanese, in fact, during the time of the first Godzilla and whatever, I think the term was, I'm going to get this wrong, Haibakashu or Hibakashu or something. And that was literally the original term or transition into Kaiju was that word, and it laid a lot more on bad luck. In fact, it was more of if you had that kind of luck, you were ostracized. You weren't, and it based it a lot on the radiation burns and the radiation injury of the dropping of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, where that term was applied to people because they were pretty much ostracized because they were so ashamed of what they have done to the world that all these diseases, radiation diseases that resulted from the dropping of the bomb, literally the Japanese people didn't want to have anything to do with that. They were more concerned about rebuilding their nature. So that term, and like I said, I'm getting it wrong, it's like Hayabakushu or Habakashua, something like that, meant bad luck. And that, in fact, transitioned itself into Kaiju, believe it or not, which, in fact, you have a big monster stomping through your neighborhood. Man, we're having a lousy day, things like that. So that's the little bit that I know.
And looking at the Japanese of Godzilla, which is Gojira, which is gorilla.
Gojira.
Yeah.
Right. Gojira.
Right, which the term in is gorilla, and then the other term that was used is Kujira, which means whale.
Whale.
Which alludes, because he's underwater.
Sounds like something Elon Musk would create. A gorilla whale. I can see it.
Yeah. So I'm thinking Toho at that time was, looked at how Kong was received in the U.S. And they were looking for their own King Kong, perhaps. And so Godzilla comes out and is super popular in Japan. And then America, they want to be number one as always. They see this and like, well, I think we can do it. And they look and they add Raymond Burr.
Yeah.
Which at that time was Perry Mason, I believe.
Yes. No, he wasn't Perry Mason yet, I don't think. I could be wrong. That was 56. I think after that he became Perry Mason.
Okay. All right. Well, I know they wanted to take someone who was popular at that time, and they added him in the film and, changed some scenes a bit. Do you guys like the 56 version with Raymond Burr compared to the original?
Yeah, I mean it's essentially the same. We just kind of get a bonus narrator, with Burr. I mean, literally, he stands on Tokyo Tower and is like, "Oh my God, it's all burning, John." I mean, we get a narration out of it, but I think they both work overall. I mean, obviously, I think all of us probably saw the 56 first. It was. I don't know that I saw the original until Criterion put out their box, not the most recent box set, but they put out like a special edition thing about, I don't know, 10 years ago. Okay. That might have been the first time I saw the actual full Japanese edition. So watching the Burr so many times and then coming back to the original, I didn't feel like it really swapped too much out. It was different for sure. Like every time you get the Japanese version and the American version, they're always different. 84 is one of the weirdest changes from a Japanese to American, and for me the American is almost better because they kind of treated it like a comedy versus how serious the 84 Japanese one was. But anyway, I think they both work, and the fact that they both exist, I think, also helps with new audiences who might want to try and go backwards, because going backwards in Godzilla films is much more difficult than coming forwards. Anybody that watches King of the Monsters that just came out with all the CGI and all of that, and then you go back and you watch, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, most people would be like, "What the hell's going on?" But if you start Showa and you come forward, I think there's a little bit more of an ease of use. But so I think having the Burr edition for a new watcher is probably a good thing to have.
Yeah, I think Tom's right, because it went from serious to comedy to serious, and going back to the first Godzilla movie, it was absolutely total serious. It was supposed to be horror. We didn't see literally the atomic blast come from his mouth. We saw some sort of fog, some sort of stream of steam that, melted basically everything. Whereas modern day Godzilla, you got atomic blast and it's literally glowing, blowing, heat or ray. But I think Raymond Burr's connection to it was his connection between American and Japanese, whereas Godzilla initially was released totally 100% Japanese, no subtitles. It was their movie. And I guess, I don't know, I'm making this up, but some American company said, hey, we got to have that. And they said, but it's all in Japanese. And they said, well, we need to have some sort of American guy there pretty much describing everything that's happening to the American audiences, because all we would see was death and destruction from this giant walking lizard. And if we didn't have Raymond Burr to connect the dots, we would just be in like, well, okay, it was an okay movie. I wish I knew what was going on, So,
yeah, you have to be able to understand who your audience is going to be, and to just throw the Japanese version out. What's the connection to an American audience?
Right. Agreed. And then it went funny. And then we got the sound stage. There's more undeveloped land in Japanese that okay, you guys don't know this either. I'm also an architect, okay? And all I can see is land. Oh my God, they are really taking long steps over major acreage. I could develop that place. Every Godzilla movie during our time, the 70s and whatever, it's like, holy crap, man, where are they fighting now? Is that the same plot of land?
What I thought was always interesting about the time, like how America didn't really follow. We didn't start the American version of kaiju films was giant insects. You had them, giant ants.
Yeah.
You had the beginning at the end. You had giant grasshoppers, things like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which was a giant octopus. Ray Harryhausen.
Yes.
And our response was more grounded and more naturalistic, whereas Godzilla, that's what I meant in terms of like there was a whimsy in, I think, in Asian culture that we don't necessarily have, and I don't know why that is, but it was interesting to see the American response to things like atomic testing was always to take something that was, like in them giant ants. Nuclear testing has caused them to grow giant size, and it's like we took some kind of we took something from Godzilla, but then we wanted to put our own. Well, we've got to make it more realistic, and we're still doing that 50 years later, 60, 70 years later. Whether it's the 2014 Godzilla, even Roland Emmerich's Godzilla, we have to try and make it more realistic somehow. And I think that's such an interesting impulse. Whereas I really liked Mike Dougherty's King of the Monsters because it wasn't. Both I loved Pacific Rim and I loved King of the Monsters because it embraced more of what I loved growing up with the kaiju films. I don't know 100%. If that's your...
No, 100%. King of the Monsters, Dougherty's King of the Monsters, was a Showa movie. I mean, it was... Yes. He loved the Showa era, and it shows in what he brought to us. Whereas everything else, not everything else, but like you said, the 98 and the 2014, it's all, you're trying to ground it in things that it doesn't necessarily need to be grounded in. So I totally agree. I came out of that with the biggest smile on my face I ever felt in my life. I had such a good time.
I ran home and did a review on it for because Mike himself, because I know him, invited me to this screening like 3 or 4 weeks before it opened. And they had this big event at the Cinerama Dome where they turned on this giant light. And they had a giant Godzilla. And my girlfriend, I don't think she saw me bouncing on up and down in a seat, in a movie seat, the way she did. And I felt the same way in Pacific Rim too. Like when the Battle of Hong Kong, when Gypsy Danger picks up an oil tanker to use as a baseball bat, and the kaiju in that finally unfurls its wings and they battle in the sky. I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I am on the right panel because
it's the fantasy of it all.
I can't negate anything these guys have said already. I love King of the Monsters. I'm the type of guy that I stay in my seat until the screen goes dark, because you see extra stuff at the end of it. And it's like, I did the same thing with Godzilla. When Godzilla first came out, they started mentioning all these kaijus. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be a Mothra movie. Oh my God, it's going to be a Rodan movie. Oh my God. So I am with you guys, except you, Darius. I am with all of you guys 100%.
Why do you guys think that is in terms of, like, I was really sort of disappointed by the reception King of the Monsters received, because I thought everybody, the same way I thought everybody would be on board. Pacific Rim did very well in Asia, but it didn't do nearly as well here. And I talked to people about it. I'm like, wasn't that the greatest thing you've ever seen? And they were most of the people I talked to were like, it was all right. And I was like, but and clearly, I don't know if it's because you had to have a connection to these things when you were younger, but everybody, I think that they couldn't get into the overt fantasy, larger than life aspects of it all.
It's really interesting because I think you're right.
And with Campia,
what's that?
Didn't you have the same conversation with Campia when Pacific Rim came out?
Yeah, yeah. And I was floored by this, because when I saw Pacific Rim, I thought Guillermo del Toro struck the perfect balance between making these things believable and realistic, but then also giving you all that chewy, nougaty goodness that I loved since I was a little kid.
I think we have to ask Darius this question, because I think it was literally, Robert, a generational thing. That's the only connection I have, because
Darius loves Power Rangers, so he grew
I understand
up with
that.
sense of,
yeah, and this is why I think this question needs to go to Darius, because we old farts. I know you're probably 22, Robert. We old farts. Okay. We related to it almost immediately, because after school we're running home, and sometimes on your UHF channel there's Ultraman that's on. He's fighting giant, dinosaurs or creatures or whatever. We saw the Godzilla movies on those Saturday afternoons. We grew up with that kind of stuff. So Darius, how did you get into kaijus?
So I'm a big fan of Pacific Rim, like even Uprising, where it has a split, more or less split kind of reception. But I think it is that I think there's a mental kind of disarray with liking big giant stuff because of Power Rangers. I think honestly, especially in the American audiences, I think Power Rangers kind of messed up kaiju films for us here, because people just assume if you like these big bombastic fights and monsters and robots, then you're a kid. That's a problem. Like, you can't be. But then these same people who kind of didn't warm up to Pacific Rim or warm up to the King of Monsters, they love things like the Marvel movies, which I'm like, come on, like it's comic books. What's the difference? Like, legitimately, I love Pacific Rim, especially when I first saw it. And I was just like, me being a Power Ranger fan, I was just like, it felt like a grittier Power Ranger movie, or I guess it felt like a grittier kind of just like movie in that genre, but it just felt more. It felt like, and I guess when you have a acclaimed director like Guillermo del Toro, creating it, you get something more than what you would have gotten in, say, like Ultraman or Power Rangers, where you get a little bit more attention to detail. And I thought Idris Elba would have pulled more audiences towards, Pacific Rim, and John Boyega was a good way to market, Uprising. So I think it's just this mindset that, like, if you like this, like, big movies like Godzilla, or if you like stuff like Ultraman or Power Rangers, you're just a kid. That's a kid mindset, which I disagree completely, because even now, like, I watched the new Ultraman series. I actually just finished watching it before getting on the panel. And what I love about Ultraman is just that it still has that Showa era feel in this, I guess, Reiwa era setting. So it's just like you still get the Reiwa era, you know, new stuff like the transformation devices and whatnot, but you still get that old gritty feel of the old Ultraman or old kaiju films from the past, where it still feels like it's a good mesh between the past and the present. I think Ultraman, and I always recommend Ultraman to a lot of my friends because I think Ultraman is the best way for you to get a new age feel to kaiju related content, but you still get this past feel where if you want to go back to the past, well, you watch Ultraman, you're used to this type of fighting style or this type of you know, bombastedness that comes with these types of series.
So
Yeah,
I think there's another element to this though, because if you look at as far as the I don't want to say the failure of King of the Monsters, but it didn't perform like we all probably expected it to.
Right.
Because if you go back and if you look at the 2014 Godzilla, it made, I don't know, something about $500 million. Kong came out, it made about $500 million. And then this one comes out, and we're all sitting here going, Jesus Christ, this is the Avengers of monsters.
Kaijus.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it comes in under 400 million. So
Yeah.
somewhere there was a disconnect from those two previous legendary movies to King of the Monsters. And I think that part of it, to me, in my opinion, part of it is more specifically to Godzilla than Kong, is while 2014 Godzilla did okay, it was very much a movie where people were, you either loved it or you hated it. You either were like all in, or you were like, dude, this is really lame.
Yeah, but there was an absence between the 2014 movie and the 1998 movie where people didn't like Matthew Broderick's version. So it seems like they gave the producers or the studio execs another chance to give us a believable Godzilla, go back to close to the original design, thus the 2014. And it may have brought the crowds in for that, but I'm wondering what happened, like you said, the disconnect. What was it in that 2014 movie that people said, okay, I've had enough?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, the 2014 movie is a mess because, and I can't think of the guy's name, the director, Gareth. So he did the movie Monsters way back in the day. We've all seen that, I'm sure, which was cool for what it was, and he did a lot of unique things to try and save budget and so on because it was a small budget film. But he basically took his Monsters ideology and transplanted it into Godzilla. And I'm like, dude, we know what this monster looks like. You don't have to keep starting and stopping.
Teasing it.
You know, when spoiler alert, when Cranston dies and the movie becomes about the army kid, I'm like, dude, this is boring right now. Every time you go to Army Kid, I'm bored. So basically what it is I feel like people went and saw Godzilla because they were like, oh, let's see what this is. And most of them came out going, well, that wasn't really anything. And so that ideology moved, and they were like, well, I saw the other one and I didn't like it, so I'm not going to see it. So that's number one. Number two, and I'm in a lot of Godzilla groups on the Facebook and so on, and we all know what these things are all a mess. But when King of the Monsters came out, it was almost like there was no excitement. They were all sitting around going, well, I'm going to wait for the reviews. I'm like, are you a Godzilla fan? I mean, you've seen Son of Godzilla, right? Certainly you're going to go see this. Good Lord.
Right.
But they were waiting for the reviews, and the reviews came out, and they were all choppy as they always are. Oh, there's too much humans. Oh, there's too much monsters. I'm like, guys, you're a Godzilla fan in theory. Yeah. We've seen them all. We've all seen them all. Why on earth are you not out there day one dropping your ticket down and at least taking the Godzilla gamble that it should be better than what we saw before, or see what they've given you.
Yeah, they'll go to each and every Godzilla movie going out. Whatever the result is, it's going to be the result. But they're still going to go to the next one after that one as well, because they're Godzilla fans, But I always base, like, Robert and I and Brian too are big Star Trek fans and whatever. And but we will go to those Star Trek films regardless. But we know the success of the film relies more on who we call back in the day, Robert, mundanes. Okay.
Yeah.
And we know, and The Voyage Home was the movie that did that amongst all of the Star Trek movies, because it's like, oh my God, this sounds like it's funny, says my grandmother, says my grandpa. I wouldn't mind seeing that. They're in San Francisco, says my grandmother, says my grandpa, because that's what the full success of a theatrical movie is the people that actually know nothing about what we know all of about, and then they walk out of there going, "Hey, that was pretty damn good," you know. So
Right.
the fandom cannot support a movie. I'm sorry, they can't. Even Star Wars fans. There are a lot of people who will never admit they're Star Wars fans, but will always go to a Star Wars movie. But they're not the diehards, the 501, or anything like that. So I'm still kind of confused at what happened in 2014 that didn't give the numbers to King of Monsters the way it should have. I'm really a little confused about that because it was in fact a sequel, and sequels are usually better than the originals.
What's interesting too is I think Kong is better than people even give it credit for.
Yeah.
I think
Skull Island is a
Kong,
great movie.
Skull
Yeah.
Island, because you had there, it wasn't totally serious. I mean, the characters were, but the monster battles were great. The time period where it was set was really interesting.
And had Samuel L. Jackson, damn it.
It was. I find that movie. The more I revisit that movie, the more I like it, and it makes me. I've actually heard that Kong versus Godzilla is really good, from what I understand.
That's good to hear.
The buzz in the industry is that it's really, really good, and I'm hoping that's the case. I mean, I'm sure it probably is because the guy who directed it is a big fan as well. But I do find like it's not just the failure of King of the Monsters. The same thing happened to Pacific Rim as well.
It did.
And I think that there is something, and I would have thought, look, we live in a video game society now. We live in an anime society where we have been conditioned to enjoy all of these things, and everybody, like you'd said, Darius, the Marvel universe is there, but it's so weird because even the Marvel universe is anchored by very human, very relatable characters. I mean, even though Steve Rogers is a super soldier, he's got a lot of heart. He's like the dad we never had, and everybody is very much these superheroes are very much grounded in their humanity. Even characters like Thor and all that, so we can relate. Like my mom can relate. You know, she can go see Captain America: The First Avenger and like it, but my mom can never. She'll never be able to make the leap into the giant monster realm. You know, she can't. And like you were saying, Mark, you have to have everybody in the audience.
Yeah.
And I think that neither Pacific Rim nor King of the Monsters captured the whimsy is too much. Right. You know, we're asking the audience. You're asking the regular audience a little too much. Those movies it just doesn't work for them.
You think they need more believability? Is that what you're saying?
I think yes. I think Godzilla of 2014 was an attempt to do that, but in doing that, like cutting away, I just found that annoying. Like it was so obvious. It was a trope almost in that film. Like, let's not show the monster. And it got to the point where they were cutting away on purpose too much, where you're like, come on, man. You know, someone shuts a door to a cellar where they're hiding just
or the TV turns off.
and I mean, it's like they were ashamed. They didn't know how to go full kaiju in 2014 because if you show Godzilla too much or running around the city too much or close up, you lost whatever reality he was trying to create within the frame. And I found that very interesting that it felt like Godzilla 2014 was a movie at war with its own genre.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you had 40 minutes of that movie with no Godzilla, essentially. He finally shows up at the airport. You get this immense roar, and you're like, holy crap, here we go.
Right.
Cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't see him again for 10 minutes. It's like, oh my God, Gareth, what are you doing?
Well, it's really interesting. It was very interesting to watch. I found it an interesting and frustrating experience because, look, the effects technology was great, but even the creatures that Godzilla was fighting were goofy, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't little like they tried to have it both ways, and it didn't really work. And I just don't understand.
Yeah, hey, Robert, I got a question for you then. Could this also be because at that time it was the old guard at WB? Do you think a lot of that had to do with the way that they were doing like with the DC movies and stuff?
You mean the studio
Yeah.
executives? Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think that Warner Brothers, under Kevin Tsujihara's leadership at the studio, I think there was a real problem both with their superhero films and their monster films, in the sense that they didn't. The studio executives, what people don't understand is that the people that are running the studios are usually Ivy League educated MBAs, business people.
Probably
And
never fans of anything other than sports.
From a corporate standpoint, they're good hires. They look good on paper.
Yes.
But and everybody says, like, everybody's a Star Trek fan, everyone's a Star Wars fan, everyone's a fan of. They say that,
right?
But if they don't, they're not really that way. And I thought, like, if you look at what happened to Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, those were both movies that really suffered because the studio leadership either lost their nerve, or they probably like Batman v Superman, but like, you can't make a 3-hour long Batman Superman movie, so let's cut it out and we get the theatrical release. And, you know, I'm sure I can only imagine being a Warner Brothers executive when you're watching Batman v Superman, and there's the Batman nightmare dream sequence where Earth's being turned into apocalypse and you're seeing the Omega symbol on the ground. I'm sure everyone was like, what does this mean? Like, they don't even know. And the same thing probably happened. Now, however, though, the difference is in Hollywood, Kevin Feige worked on 13 Marvel movies before starting the MCU. You know, he worked on X-Men and Spider-Man and Elektra and Daredevil and Ghost Rider and all the movies that were made in the 2000s, and he saw what worked and what didn't. And he was a fan. He's a huge fan. He grew up a fan, so he knew what to do. But now with Walter Hamada, I mean, one of the things that I equate, and this might be a little weird, when I saw Aquaman, I couldn't believe it. First of all, I loved it, but I'm like, how did this supremely goofy movie that embraces high, crazy fantasy at the end when they're riding sharks, armored sharks, and giant seahorses, I'm like, this movie never would have been made 5 years ago. The Warner Brothers brass would never have allowed a movie that
can't do a pitch on just that scene alone. You know, it's impossible to say, hey, we're going to have a bunch of squids. We're going to have some crustaceans. Yes, and they're armored. And they got spears. We're going to have dolphins. We're going to have killer whales. And somebody at the end of the table is going, what the hell is he talking about?
I mean, when I sat and watched Aquaman, I honestly could not believe what I was watching from shot to shot, frame to frame, because the same thing that Mike Doherty did in King of the Monsters, James Wan did in, James Wan's from Australia, but even in Australia, they did get a lot of super robot cartoons from the 70s and were able to watch those. And he obviously was influenced heavily by kaiju films and all kinds of movies.
Sure.
And it once Aquaman makes $1 billion, to me, the audience, the general audience, is now, the needle is being moved into more of the realm. They'll buy off into the kaiju genre.
Right. Because you're seeing on the screen on your home television, the #1 movie of the year is, you know, whatever, and some Joe Blow who didn't even think twice about ever going to see Aquaman going, maybe we ought to go check that out. And then it starts an avalanche, you know.
And well, Jason Momoa, again, they ground it, you know, you're building off of what had been built off of in the DCEU, but you've got enough grounding that I was just fascinated by the same thing with the kaiju film, that you have your human characters. Like, I thought Millie Bobby Brown was a great way to bring the Stranger Things crowd in, the younger crowd, to come watch this movie, and I thought she was really good in King of the Monsters. And I think that Godzilla versus King Kong is going to be very telling in terms of what it does. I mean, obviously it has to be good, but how will it play to audiences now? Have audiences been indoctrinated, so to speak, into the ways of these films now? Did Aquaman, and I just see the goofiness of Aquaman and the supreme fantasy-ness of it all as being sort of a turning point. And when it made $1 billion, I was like, I can't believe this movie made over $1 billion, because as much as I loved it, I just thought it was so wacky that I didn't think audiences that love the MCU would go.
But I'll tell you
that's
what,
the thing.
This goes back to what you were talking about earlier with the giant bugs and stuff. Even though Aquaman was batshit, it's still understandable. It's still people. It's still a seahorse. It's still a shark. It's still
Right.
a turtle. It's still an octopus, as opposed to something giant, roaring and fighting with something else. So I think that was the saving grace of Aquaman. Also, the fact that Aquaman used to ride seahorses back in the old day anyway.
That's what I was waiting for too. It's like, okay, how are you going to connect me to 1966?
Yeah,
and there he
that was the
goes,
thing
and he
for me.
grabs
I
a
was like,
seahorse, and I went, yes!
I am not a Momoa fan at all. When he was cast for Aquaman, I was like, no, I'm out of here. But then as we got closer and closer to it, I was like, okay, look, this is how I'll go see this movie. Show me him riding a seahorse, and I'm in. And damned if they didn't put it in the trailer, so I went and saw it.
Okay.
What did you think, Tom?
That's all it took, Tom, huh?
What did you think of it?
I thought it was the most comic book movie of all time.
That's a good description. That's a good description.
And I still don't buy Momoa as Aquaman, but he was serviceable.
You wanted blonde hair. You wanted white guy blonde hair.
I didn't know what I wanted because, again, he was serviceable. He was fine. But because I had grown up with Arthur from the comics,
right?
I was on that visual. Even if it was the blonde dude with the hair and the hook, that's the Aquaman that I understand. So when they went with Momoa, it was like, I mean, this is Drago and he's underwater now. Like, what's going on?
Yeah,
so it was weird from a visual sense, but he was serviceable. He was fine. And I thought that the Black Manta dude was cool. We didn't get enough of Black Manta, so hopefully that's what part 2 is.
Right.
So I thought it was good. I mean, that and like Ragnarok were like the most comic book movies of all time. They just threw all the dice and were like, we're just gonna go and take all the chances.
I love Ragnarok only because I knew I wasn't going to be watching a serious Thor, and that's fine. Right. Once you take me to that level, I will accept anything else you throw at me. And they kept the humor going. They kept the action paces going. And it's like, all right, we'll get back to Asgard some other movie, But right now, I'm going to enjoy Ragnarok,
Yeah.
I have to say that what was really interesting is to see Toho's response to Godzilla 2014, which was Shin Godzilla.
Yeah.
And they pushed it. They did a really smart thing, and they made their own Godzilla film and made it realistic. Yes. And I was really surprised by the direction that they took. But yet the whole idea of watching, like, how does FEMA, how does a government deal with Godzilla and play it as a natural disaster? And I thought that was genius. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Shin Godzilla, and I understand that, again, it's a kind of its own continuity, like Godzilla GMK is sort of. Yeah. But I loved it. I was like, this is exactly the way to. I was surprised, like the American. I was surprised that wasn't an American. That the Americans didn't come up with that. But man, I really thought Shin Godzilla was great, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did.
Yeah.
My only issue with that film is he's googly eyes.
He's googly eyes.
Yeah, I loved the film. I just didn't like the design of the googly eyes. Just took me out of it.
Yeah, I mean, even in 2014 Godzilla, all I was concentrating more was on the real estate. I'm like, this country will never recover after they have to pay out everything they got to replace with, and you can't have a Godzilla movie without having, destruction. And destruction means property. It doesn't necessarily mean, well, there goes another forest. No, there's a 40-foot building or 40-story building that was just knocked down. How are they going to replace that? Hire me.
Look at how long it took to replace the World Trade Center.
Yeah, it's like, my God. Yeah.
So what did you guys think of Toho's second Godzilla film, where we actually see Godzilla go up against another kaiju?
Gigantus.
Yeah. Oh wait, I couldn't remember. Was that the name of it? Creature?
Gigantus, the fire monster. It wasn't technically Godzilla. It was. I mean, Godzilla came about from the American side of it. It was Gigantus, the fire monster.
No wonder it was stupid. I mean,
it was a very weird. Yeah, it was a very weird thing. I think it was cool to get. We got Anguirus, of course, who became a fan favorite over the years, but. I think that's saving grace was that you had monster fights, because other than that, it was just dudes in a plane trying to find some fish, so it was fun because of what it was.
He was a freaking armadillo or porcupine, I mean, every time he needed to fight, he had to hop up on his hind freaking legs, man. No one can win a fight if you always got to jump up on somebody. I mean, it's that's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was fine to see monsters fighting. And then, so the third film is when Kong comes into the picture. And I think that's one of the most beloved Japanese films. Though the ending, I believe there's multiple endings to that, but they only have the theatrical ending that aired.
There's not two endings as in like one wins and one doesn't. It's more of like an editing change. And actually, if you guys get if you get this monstrosity, the Japanese version is on this as well. Okay. And you can watch it, and they're very different movies. It's like watching '84 American and Godzilla. They're very different movies. But ultimately, in the end, Kong still swims away, and you get the essential, same story or same finale.
Well, goes back to Robert's concern, mine also. Basically, with the upcoming Godzilla versus King Kong, nobody wants to see a loser. I don't know how they're going to carry out this movie. I mean, I hate it when Marvel characters fight each other. It's like, what are you doing?
The title is misleading.
I think there's two things you got to think about with this. Number one, the license is up. There's no more Godzilla after this until Toho decides to re-up and let us do more. Right. Number two, Godzilla's died many times in the past and has just been reborn. We already understand, even in this legendary universe, there are other Godzillas that have existed. So to kill Godzilla in this, if they decide to go to a point where they actually kill a monster, fits within the Godzilla understanding, and it
knowing that he
contractual elements.
Yeah.
And then if they decide to do more, there's always a way to bring Godzilla back.
So you're saying that all that could be left is just the tip of his freaking tail, and Godzilla's coming back.
Well, a Godzilla. Again, we've gotten different Godzillas through all of our continuities.
Right, but the general audience,
even when you have Godzilla, like the Burning Godzilla in Junior, Godzilla died, Junior absorbed the energy, we have a new Godzilla.
Yeah,
so there are ways to bring Godzilla back without it being the actual one that lost the Kong.
Yeah, but even so, with the new movie coming out, you're asking people to choose.
Sure.
And I'm not feeling comfortable sitting in the theater rooting for one or the other. I'm looking for a third element, whereas they have to literally team up.
Don't you think they're going to have to, though, at the end?
So,
I mean, because I don't think
we have to be really careful here before we go forward. Do we know about the spoilers that have released?
I don't. I know nothing.
Then I will step away.
I am guessing, based on my massive intelligence of millennial past, that if they team up to fight a third element, this is the only way I think I'm actually going to enjoy this movie, because I cannot imagine the demise of either one of them. I think. Go ahead.
Have to team up again. I mean, it's the classic superheroes meeting, misunderstanding, fighting each other, and then something else happens. And by the way they've portrayed King Kong in Skull Island, I don't think that King Kong is smart, and I think he would realize that, wait a minute, I don't need to kill Godzilla. I don't need to rip him his jaws open and tear him in half. I mean,
he was the hero in Skull Island. He was literally the hero, even though the Vietnam guys wanted to blow in the Kingdom Come. They did it for retribution purposes. And
I think King Kong, a cooler head will prevail.
Yeah,
I think he'll be the one to say, "Bruh, we don't have to fight. Come on, what's up?"
Yeah.
There's got to be some other element, because otherwise, I mean, you'd have to introduce something.
Well, Legendary. I don't know if it was Legendary. Somebody involved with the film at the higher ups. They came out very early on and said there is going to be a winner. What that means, who knows? But that was one of the very early
The
things that
audience
started talking about this.
Well,
hopefully, yes.
a
Hopefully,
winner
yes.
can also equate to a tie. Okay.
Correct. It doesn't
You
mean
know.
death. Just because you win doesn't mean you've,
God, yeah.
killed
Yeah.
the other person.
Somebody else has died.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100% right.
Right. So, well, we'll see. We'll see.
It could also be a red herring. I mean, they do that.
Oh,
a
sure,
lot.
absolutely.
I mean, I think all movies these days are made in the hopes of a sequel. So they generate probably even multiple endings to a script where they say, hey, this ended up testing very well, or the dailies are looking very good. Why don't we go with option C, okay, and do this at the ending of the movie? And I think the audience would accept that, a little better. My thought.
So,
But then I like Ragnarok anyway. So
let's talk about the two films that were released in 1964, which are probably of that time frame two of my favorite films, which is Mothra versus Godzilla, and then Ghidorah, the three-headed monster.
man, if I was 6 inches tall, good mother. Because I love those girls. Talking about Mothra, of course. I love those girls. Here we go. Look you, Robert.
The Cosmos. I love the princesses. By the way, I loved how Mike Doherty incorporated the idea of the princesses.
In King
I'm
Monster.
third generation monarch. I'm like, that was so good. I love that.
Yeah, that was fantastic. It didn't click with me at that point. I'm like, okay, well, there's a Japanese girl. There's another scientist. Blah 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 blah. And then I started hearing what's the name? Was that Bear McCreary's music or McConaughey?
Yeah.
McCreary,
Yeah, and started hearing that in the background real faintly. And I'm kind of very observant when it comes to soundtrack music because I'm a fan of soundtracks. And I started hearing some in the background. Nobody else caught on what was going on. And for some reason, I screamed in the theater. Okay, no one knew what the hell I was talking about. But
there was a lot of that in that movie. I mean, I think people didn't understand that were sitting around me because I was chuckling and gleefully munching my popcorn with something, and nobody else got it. It was sort of depressing because it was what was called, they called it an influencer screening. So it was for people that were like influencers, but not necessarily in the movie realm.
Social media guides or whatever. Yeah.
And it was not a crowd. There was a few like LA movie people there, but it was and the crowd was it was over their heads, and it was kind of depressing because I was having the greatest.
I caught those tunes in the background, man, and I just lost it, and no one basically got it because first off, I'm wondering, well, where the hell are the twins in this movie? And then of course 2 and 2 equals 4, and there goes the music, and I'm like, holy crap, that a boy, that's the way you do it.
I'm glad he was picked because I remember like I don't know, it was like maybe 3 seasons into The Walking Dead, and there was an interview with him, and he said how much he loved Godzilla. So kind of full circle for him to come and work on that film.
It's a good soundtrack. It works really well. I mean,
anything Bear does is a good soundtrack. I just love his work. I loved it.
Yeah. So let's see. So Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, which was the second film of that year. Do you guys have any fond memories of that film right there?
Incidentally, that's the only time outside of, I guess, maybe King of the Monsters that Ghidorah is actually just bad on his own. Every other time he's alien control or something else going on, which is crazy. It's so weird to me that he's like this ultimate Godzilla villain, but only one time did he ever just like show up and go, "Rawr, I'm a bad guy."
Yeah.
Every other time he had to be coerced.
Well, personally, I thought the regenerating heads was brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
You can cut off a head, and there you're fighting 2 heads, and this one little stump is kind of, wrangling around. But literally, the fact that the sucker can regrow his head, and be back to normal made literally that bastard unbeatable, in my opinion, at that point. So, Darius, did you remember early day, not King of the Monsters here, but early days?
Faintly. It was because see, I'm not one of those. I find it hard to watch old style like early 60s, 70s, 50s movies. So it's just like if I come across it, I find it like very interesting. So it was probably like mid 2005. I was just like wandering, scrolling through the channels, and then it was on. Can't remember what channel it was on, but I saw it and I was like, so because I didn't even know King Ghidorah like that up until that point.
The title would have been Monster Zero, if that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Well, Monster Zero is the next one.
It was the next one after.
Yeah, so King Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, is Ghidorah's first appearance.
Monster Zero is when he was possessed by the aliens, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's when they take Godzilla to another planet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. They said, "Hey, can we kidnap your monsters, dude?"
Yeah. Invasion of the Astro Monster, Monster Zero. That to me, it's the hardest question to ask somebody. Like, what's your favorite Godzilla movie? It's an impossible question.
Yeah.
But I think within the eras, it's a little easier. And Invasion of the Astro Monster, Monster Zero, for me, that's like a top 3 at least. I love Invasion of the Astro Monster. It's such a great science fiction movie. It's so bizarre, taking Godzilla to another planet. You have great monster groupings. The humans aren't annoying. I mean, it works.
And I thought that was a little bit of a bringing together the non-Godzilla fans, I say giant monster fans, whatever, to, like I said, the mundanes. Robert, basically, like Star Trek Voyage Home. It's like, whoa, what is that? It's a 3-headed freaking. It really wasn't as corny looking as some of the other costume monsters who had to jump up on their hind legs just to sock Godzilla in the jaw. This guy was seriously threatening to Godzilla. I'm like, this is going to be a good fight.
Well, and originally he was supposed to be red, white, and blue. He wasn't going to be gold.
Oh, thank God they didn't do that. Good God.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, there's in fact X Plus made. I mean, you can find pictures of it too. There's literally pictures of this thing. But X Plus even made a toy out of this thing with big old red, white, and blue wings and everything. Go do yourself a favor when you're all done here. Go look up Ghidorah red, white, and blue, and you'll see the original color scheme which they threw away.
I can't even imagine.
Well, they alluded.
I can't either.
They alluded to that in what, the 90? Is it 93? The 93 version. Was it after when they brought Ghidorah back?
Right.
And you've got the time travel element.
Right.
And there was that in there. I mean, that was definitely, I could see that, even though it's not red, white, and blue, but the idea behind it was kind of interesting. But yeah. I mean, I again, like you, Tom, I love Invasion of the Astro Monster. I mean, it was, I've got my Criterion Godzilla set. It's right there. And
what was the name of the Ultraman kind of character that was helping him fight?
Well, that's Jet Jaguar. He came in Godzilla versus Megalon. That's about, I don't know, 5 or 6 movies away.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Although that's the one they always seem to air. I think I've seen that Godzilla movie more than any other.
Yeah, that one was one of those that got heavy. Well, I mean, it was in the theaters too, but it got heavy circulation on, all of the sci-fi Sunday afternoon channels everywhere. So everybody remembers Megalon. Everyone he's sliding around on his tail doing a drop kick. I mean, it's a terrible movie, but it's also fantastically good because there's a lot of monsters going on in it. I mean,
the battles are great.
Yeah. I mean, Megalon's knocking things down all the time. Gigan shows up. You got robot dudes. It's a fun movie, even though it's not really a great movie.
Yeah, it was WWE. I mean, the entire movie. It was WWE. Tag you in, buddy.
Well, and then move into Godzilla versus Gigan, and they're literally doing suplexes in the next movie. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh my God.
So, you guys were talking about Invasion of the Astro Monster. Then the next film is, Ibra, Horror of the Deep.
Yeah. This is where it starts going left a little bit.
I did not see that. I did not
see it.
It's basically a giant lobster.
Oh joy! I'll bring butter with me in that fight.
Godzilla's sleeping in a cave for some reason on this island.
Is the cave big enough?
Yeah. And
Yeah, and this, I mean, this was 1966. So
God.
Yeah, we're still not at the worst Godzilla movie ever yet, but this one starts to dip down below. Yeah, there was a period of time where they took him, and I think this was a budgetary thing, as I recall reading something about it, because they didn't want to keep, they wanted to avoid building all the buildings. So to make more South Pacific islands and just having trees and bushes and stuff, it was just cheaper to make. So they started making these movies like this and Son of Godzilla and so on. They moved him out of the city to save some budgetary elements so that Godzilla can stomp through the forest and the jungle.
There you go.
Versus, knocking down all their buildings all the time. So yeah, Ibira is it's not very good. none of it's really good. And the fact that Ibira came back in Final Wars and not Titanosaurus is absolutely unjustifiable.
Oh, sorry to disappoint, Tom. This is not acceptable. I want another monster.
It's not. Titanosaurus got the raw end of that job, man.
it's funny that we look back at all these films, and I think they kind of played a part in people turning their heads in the American audience. Is the whole like rubber suit, man suit with the buildings and stuff.
Yes.
And I know Robert and Campia have talked about Godzilla King of Monsters, how they released their marketing like at Comic-Con the year before.
Yeah.
And the whole marketing thing, it was like, oh, cool at first. And then people are like waiting for it and never showed up.
Yeah, it was really a bummer. It's funny. I rekindled my love of Godzilla in the early 90s. Like, I love that Godzilla. It's Godzilla versus Mothra, right? That's what it's called.
Yeah.
That was the
that I had an emotional response to that movie.
Uh-oh.
Like I literally got choked up in that film. And I love that. And I love the next one was Godzilla versus Ghidorah, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those two films, I'm like, I was in, and then I didn't love the stuff. I mean, look, I love seeing Space Godzilla, and I did like Mecha Godzilla. I did, but those films I thought were all legitimately pretty good.
Yeah.
I was really back into the whole idea of Godzilla leading up. I was so I have to tell you, I thought Roland, I'm a huge Independence Day fan. I was so excited to see their version of Godzilla 98. And it was one of the most disappointing experiences I've ever had. And I didn't understand why. I mean, I'm like, how? And I honestly, after watching it, I think it was a tonal issue for me. The film just it's all over the place in terms of tone, but really it isn't really a Godzilla movie ultimately. Right. And that especially after seeing the Toho stuff of that era, it was all, I was so excited. And I think that really damaged the idea of Godzilla movies for American audiences.
Absolutely.
I really do think that 98 film did irrevocable damage, really. So
generational damage.
Yeah, generational damage, especially coming on the heels of Independence Day that everybody loved. I mean, you'd think the guys who made Independence Day, which brought that sort of whimsy to the, I mean, I felt like a little kid watching Independence Day. You would have thought that they would have nailed it. I mean, I know Dean. I'm a big fan of him, but I thought, I don't know, man. Yeah. I'm like, this is missing everything that's supposed to be in a Godzilla movie.
Right.
What did you guys think of the solo Mothra film, which I know a lot of people love?
Good. Yeah, it's a good film. The Mothra and Rodan and War of the Gargantuas.
Yes.
All of those are good standalone movies.
Hey, anytime you got the twins involved, I'm there. No problem. There is no bad Mothra movie, okay?
But I think those are all, like you said, really, they're good films. They work really, really. I mean, Rodan is surprisingly, you go back and revisit it now, it's still really holds up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one that made a mark on you, Robert, right? That's the one.
Yeah,
that
I always tell people to go back and watch. I was really bummed out that that's not in the Criterion set. I mean, I know why, but I was bummed out to not have it. But I get it. But I think that movie, it really works. I mean, I would give that film to anybody who wants to understand the genre because it really does work really, really well.
Now, is that one even on Blu-ray?
Not domestically.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, have you touched on 1978 yet?
Well, we're getting there. I just wanted to touch on one more from the 60s, and that's Destroy All Monsters.
Oh my God, dude.
That's one of the epitomes. That's the top three. Has to be in everybody's top three for
Monster
sure.
Island.
It's fantastic. And that's really your Avengers movie right there. You take all the stuff that we've done in all these other movies, we ram it all together.
Yeah.
At the end we forget that we had 5 of these monsters. Manda does nothing, Varan does nothing, but they're all there. They're all having a good time. So that's it's a good fun movie.
Yeah, Rodan had a flat screen. They had beer, kegs. It was great.
So, what film in the 70s that you wanted to talk about, Mark?
A 78? You want to call it a film? I got to do something. Hold on. You guys ready? I'm going to surprise you with something. Ready?
All right.
Me. Up from the depths, 30 stories high, breathing fire, his head in the sky. Godzilla, 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 and Godzuki. That's fantastic, man. Wait a minute, we lost Tom. Tom, did you hear me sing?
I did, yes. I was looking for my shirt. I have a shirt that says Up from the Depths, 30 stories high, yes.
Seriously? Okay, yeah, that was my 78. And
Godzilla the cartoon, man.
Well, since I do Saturday morning cartoons on Saturday morning every week, I had to throw that in because it's Godzilla. He had his own Saturday morning show. If we want to compare Godzuki to Baby Godzilla, which I will not, I do think that Godzuki was more intelligent than Baby Godzilla. Okay.
I wish that cartoon was still on. I don't even think Boomerang has that cartoon.
I can't find it either, to be honest with you.
It's not even on DVD. I mean, there's like a few episodes, but there's no here it all is, guys.
They were that embarrassed? That ain't right.
You never know. I mean, look, with the Godzilla 98, Toho bought back Godzilla. I mean, they bought it back. They're like, no one's doing anything with this again. And then they put him in Final Wars and dusted him in 30 seconds.
That's
so,
okay.
They get it, But I think the Godzilla, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon is probably more loved than they realize, at least from the American audience standpoint. I mean, it was a big thing as far as I was concerned when I was a kid, and there was virtually no merchandise at all.
Yeah,
I'll tell you right now, X Plus. If you make X Plus Godzilla toys out of that cartoon, I'm buying it all.
Yeah,
so just as a heads up, I would love that stuff.
Any
merch from that would be great.
Completely smooth, but
Yeah, but who cares? It's fine. Yeah, it's a very underrated cartoon. They did do the '98 cartoon, which a lot of people actually enjoy. The '98 Godzilla.
I watched the '98 one.
I haven't seen any of it. I don't want to go anywhere near it. But people have said that the cartoon's way beher than the movie. But
Godzilla with the jaw.
Yeah.
The jaw. So yeah.
Yeah. So Robert and Tom are like the same person. Robert has the whole Hot Toys collection, and Tom has the everything Godzilla. So
I love the X Plus toys. I had an X Plus, the resin stuff, but I had the Godzilla and the Ghidorah. It was 2 parts, and you put them together. It was huge.
But did they come out with a 12-inch 98 Godzilla? Anybody remember really big Godzilla
That's
model?
Entirely possible. I was so just out of that I don't know, but it's entirely possible.
Yeah, I vaguely remember it. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, they literally made this one big, and it was the jaw, So
I didn't even like the design.
No, the design. The design was off. There was no roar. There was no fire breath.
Right.
He was burrowing through buildings. It's like This is just call it something else. And
having babies, it's
it.
like those freaking frogs that could change sex and give birth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, come on, guys.
They should have just named it something else. You probably would have had a moderate success on your hands.
Yeah,
and
then we had all these
none of us would have to have suffered through it.
Yeah, it was a hard movie to get through, to be honest with you. It was good in the beginning because, like I said, there was a disconnect from, I guess, 70s Godzilla, and then this 98 came out, and I'm all excited. But when you have like Starlog magazine or Cinefantastique or things like that out, they reveal character designs and actors and things like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm still gonna see it, but okay. And it's like, bam.
I remember seeing it in the theater, and I was, this is terrible. And years and years later, it was on TBS or something. And I'm like,
yes, because they do play it.
Yeah, this can't be as bad as I remember. Like maybe I was just like really not in a good mood, and so I watched it again, and I was like, oh my god,
tortured yourself again.
This is worse than I can even remember.
Yeah, it's not good. I remember watching, and I was just like, I kind of got, and it's funny because I love Pacific Rim, and I kind of got a sense of like, because all I remember is just a whole bunch of rain, and I was just like, why can't I see anything?
Right.
And I just hear Matthew Broderick just screaming like, yeah, it's this, and I'm like, can I see Godzilla, please?
Yes.
The best part of that movie, and it came out as one of the greatest pieces of memorabilia ever, is Hank Azaria.
Yes,
the cameraman, and he's filming Godzilla, and
Godzilla's
Godzilla's coming down, and he's about to get stepped on, and Godzilla keeps going, and then Hank is there, and he realizes he's not dead, and he's just
he was between the toes,
and he just starts laughing. He just starts going crazy, and Hank is a great actor. And they did a trading card for that. It's a lenticular card of him laughing. So as you turn it, he's just doing this. So like it's the greatest card ever made. It's the only thing of value that ever came out of Godzilla 98.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna track that down. That's funny.
I was living in Las Vegas when that movie came out, and I remember the theater I saw it at Texas Station Casino. It was a Regal theater, and I just remember walking out disappointed. And
you were on the Strip. Yeah, you were on the Strip, right?
No, that's it was in North Las Vegas.
Well, I mean, okay. I don't know what old town. The Strip to me would be old, I guess. Old
this was way off the Strip, but I just remember walking out and I was like, I was disappointed. I mean, it's a great cast, and that's what took me into the movie.
And as a fan, you're not going to leave. You got to watch it all the way through. Hoping it will get better. You're not going to leave.
Yeah. So as we end in the 70s, 1975 was Terror in Godzilla. That was the last time we would see Godzilla until 84. So we had the cartoon in between. What other? I mean, I'm sure we had more merchandise like the toys and stuff, or did that come later?
I don't remember. I don't remember toys until the Trendmasters stuff in the 90s. I mean, I'm sure there had to have been something, especially in Japan, but there were definitely imports that came over. But as far as like American things,
there was the Shogun Warrior Jumbo Machinder.
Yeah, those were the 70s, and there was the Godzilla version of that.
I remember that Shogun Warrior.
Yeah. But then it took the Trendmaster stuff came after the Heisei era, because you got like Space Godzilla in there, and you got Biollante in there, and all that. But those were like 96, 7, something like that.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of American stuff in that period of time. A lot of it. There was a great store I used to go to in Los Angeles called Pony Toy Go Round.
Yep.
Somebody wanted me to go down there because we were into Robotech at the time, and he was like, "Dude, they have Robotech stuff." And I was like, "Well, let's go." And I walked in there, and my jaw hit the floor when I saw all of the Godzilla stuff. And I was like, "Holy crap! This is heaven right here." So that rekindled my Godzilla fandom in a hurry with all of that. But it was all import stuff. None of that was American stuff.
No, that store, they had the radio controlled Godzilla that was like $1,000.
Yeah,
which I've always wanted. I've never bought that, but I've always wanted it.
How tall was that? How tall was that radio controlled Godzilla?
It was pretty big. I mean,
they were like almost 2 feet tall. I mean,
yeah,
they were immense.
It was a big thing. The mechanism, it was really cool because the mechanism was all metal, and then you kind of, it was a rubbery exterior that you had to kind of
Oh,
wrap around. It was
yeah.
really, really, really well done.
Yeah. Did it have any sound? Did it have a roar?
Yeah, I believe it did have a roar, and I think I had something you could have it breathe fire. Like I don't know if it was like a cap gun thing or whatever,
Ooh.
but it was maybe it had smoke pellets like you used to put in locomotives, like the old something like
Well,
that.
and you guys have seen the humidifier, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
there's actually a Godzilla
It's a
humidifier.
Godzilla humidifier.
Wow.
So when it spits out the mist, there's a blue light. So he looks like he's shooting,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a new well, it's not that new, but there is a new radio controlled Godzilla. I mean, now they're making one of the worst or the best places you can go on the web is Hobby Link Japan. I don't know if you guys know HLJ. Hobby Link Japan is my worst nightmare because it's all just Japanese toys coming out. Like speaking of Robotech, like I bought a 1/20th scale model of a Veritech, a Valkyrie fighter in fighter mode, and they made one in Gerwalk mode too, or Gerwalk mode. It's unbelievable. I mean, I'm gonna break out the airbrush and build this thing because it's huge. But the Godzilla toys they have all the X Plus stuff there, and before it even comes out, and you pre-order it, and you forget, and they charge you, and you're like, oh man. But it shows up really fast. So if you ever want to go to Hobby Link Japan, they have everything that you and all the figure arts stuff too. Because those I love those figure arts toys.
Those are great. That's where
Figure
I
arts are
started
really
because
good.
it was basically I saw that stuff and I was like, Jesus, these are fantastic. They're a little bit pricey, but they're not as expensive as X Plus. So
Right.
that's where I started. I'm like, I'm going to get these SH Monster Arts things. But I was so far behind the curve that the ones that I wanted, the prices had just jacked up through the roof because they were just gone. And so I'm like, well, if I'm going to spend $300 on a Monster Arts, I'm going to get this, 13-inch thing instead.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of fell into the X Plus, and now I just do both.
Yeah. So Tom, you've been posting a lot about this on your Facebook. You want to talk about the Godzilla comics?
Yeah, Godzilla comics, man. That was another big thing for me because that was my first introduction to what a comic book was. I was here in Michigan. They do a flea market here in Trufant, and we would go every Thursday and just wander around and just crap, whatever. But for me, I went and some guy had comic books, and I didn't know what a comic book was. But right on top of those comic books was a Godzilla comic book, and I knew what Godzilla was. So I was like, what in the hell is this? And it was Godzilla number 16, big head on the cover with cowboys hanging off his teeth. And I was like, well, this is the best 50 cents I'm probably ever going to spend. So I bought the thing. And suddenly I was into comics as well as Godzilla. I went back the next week. I'm like, dude, do you have more of these things? And it just grew. So the Godzilla comics were a huge part of my childhood. Every time we went anywhere as far as summer vacation or whatever, I would have all of my Godzilla comics with me. And that's what grew me into the comic book world, which is where I now write and publish my own comics. And I actually have the original art for that comic. That is the original Godzilla 16 by Herb Trimpe that I managed to track down. Eventually got him to sign it right before he passed a few years ago. So this is an absolute holy grail for me. And
did you do any of the Marvel Godzilla comics?
Yeah, that's the Marvel book. That's the Marvel book. They did 24 issues of Marvel. None of it had Toho monsters. They only licensed Godzilla. So there was a period of time where they were making their own. They had kind of a Destroy All Monsters storyline where they had Yetrigar and Krolar and all these other monsters that they just made up. But it was really fun, and the art was really good. Herb Trimpe art on most of it. Art was really cool. They did a Devil Dinosaur 2-part crossover. The Avengers were in there for an issue. It was a really fun series. And then it was canceled after 24. And then eventually Dark Horse picked up the series and ran with it for a few years. And right now, nobody has the license. I think Legendary kind of has a loose license. But there's no actual publisher for it.
Doesn't IDW do Godzilla?
They were doing it. They had it for a very long time. Matt Frank and Chris Mowry were doing tons of Godzilla stuff. Jay Photos, all those guys, tons of different miniseries and stuff. The longest running was Godzilla Rulers of Earth.
I thought IDW did only hardcover.
No, they do floppies. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about for the Godzilla run. I thought it was.
Oh no, they were monthly
Really?
floppies.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the collected editions are really hard to get too.
We haven't touched on this. What did you guys think of the recent animated films?
So for me, they were really cool anime sci-fi movies.
Right.
But they were terrible Godzilla movies. Is what it came down to. I think there was a lot of cool concepts and things that were going on, but as far as, again, kind of like the 98 thing, as far as it being a Godzilla thing, it was barely a Godzilla thing.
I haven't seen any. Be honest with you.
This referring to the Netflix ones, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of an alternate universe to me.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, but I enjoyed them from like you said, from a science fiction perspective. I thought that was pretty interesting, dealing with colony ships and all that. They were not great Godzilla movies, but I did like the idea that, the Earth was basically rendered uninhabitable by monsters, and I did like that element.
Are these on Netflix now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, they're Netflix originals.
Okay, I'll have to check them out.
Yeah. Just don't expect much. Just go in and try and eat your popcorn. There's 3 of them. I think the last one is probably the best.
Really, how bad can you do an animated movie? I mean, you have everything at your disposal. You can just create whatever.
Well, again, without throwing spoilers out, again, they're good sci-fi movies. Like they're conceptually they're good. But when you get to the Godzilla elements, it's kind of like it could have been almost anything else, which is,
let me ask you this, as Godzilla fans, all of us. Did you consider Godzilla good guy, bad guy, indifferent, a survivor? What category would you put Godzilla in?
Well, he changes depending on your era. I mean, even from Showa, in 54, he's
bad
guy.
Yeah.
And then if you go to the end and you're talking about Megalon and Mechagodzilla, he's clearly a good guy.
Right.
In the middle, he had to be convinced to be a good guy, to fight Ghidorah and things like that. So from the Showa era, he's very much a bad guy who reluctantly becomes good and then becomes a superhero. And then in the Heisei era, he's basically bad because they're always trying to get rid of him. But he's not doing it maliciously at that point. He's just kind of there. Oh yeah, and some monsters show up and he fights them. But they're always trying to be like, hey, shoo, Godzilla, go away. So he's not really a good guy. So I think the good guy persona came from the late 70s when we were doing all of the suplexing and drop kicks.
Right. Yeah. That's how I remember him, as basically. I mean, I actually separated Raymond Burr's version 56 Godzilla with the 70s Godzilla.
Sure.
Because that's when you were introduced to Godzilla. And he's destroying cities, and then of course, like you said before, 70s Godzilla basically came around, and next thing you know, he's fighting off supposedly the bad persona or the bad guys of that film, which were all these other kind of monsters.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yep. But then I think the big thing was the cartoon that we talked about. That's where he was 100% good guy.
100%.
And a lot of people are like, Godzilla's a good guy.
Godzilla to the rescue.
Yep.
So, yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So let's hop into the 80s then. You touched on Return of Godzilla, which in America, I believe it was called Godzilla 1985.
Yep.
Right? And they brought Raymond Burr back for that.
Yep.
So it was a 10-year period since Godzilla was on the screen.
I for whatever reason, I had to have been, I don't know, 13 or something. For whatever reason, I didn't even see that movie on the big screen. I have no idea how I did not see that movie on the big screen, but I didn't. But when I did finally see it, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I loved how the scale changed, how all the buildings were bigger than he was.
Yes,
and
the buildings were bigger.
Yeah, so he would knock into it, but it would just kind of still be there. And except for the time when he put his shoulder into it and crushed the Super X, which was one of the greatest Godzilla moments in history. And he's standing over the building goes over, and then you just get this slow shot into his face, and he just gives you this low roar, like, yeah, what are you going to do about it? It's like, oh my God, that was so good. So I loved 85. I haven't seen the 84 until recently, but I loved 85.
Yeah. The way that came off was the way with Godzilla and the city and stuff. It kind of reminded me of the Jeff Bridges King Kong film a little bit.
Sure,
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
The style, the buildings and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scale got all out of whack. He had to climb up the Twin Towers instead of the Empire State Building. Yeah. Yeah, I love the scale change on that. It was great. It's kind of the one thing that I'm not really loving about King of the Monsters' current Godzilla is he's so freaking big. It's like, it's cool, it's fine, but I love the scale of 85.
Yeah, which, well, they dubbed the new Godzilla Fatzilla.
He's got some beef on him. He's beefy. It's fine, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, so 10-year break, Godzilla comes back, and then the film after that is Godzilla versus Biollante, which interesting plot. I think it was a semi-serious film. What is your guys' take on that film?
This might be the one where we all disagree, or at least for me, because I don't understand Biollante at all from a story standpoint. Like the designs are cool. Like I like that it grew into a flower and then became like the monster and so on. So I like sort of the conceptual elements to it, but I can't watch this movie. I can't. It's so insanely dull to me, and the leaps of faith that it requires for the story to work. I'm not a fiction writer, but I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I look at the damn thing. I wouldn't have related to it back then, but all I can see is coronavirus when I look at the damn thing. And these flowers out, he's freaking red, and I'm like, okay, how do you kill that?
Yeah, and then it had like the spirit of the daughter, right? Of the doctor.
Yeah, which I didn't understand I didn't understand any of that metaphysical part that they were trying to incorporate. It didn't land for me.
It's wacky.
So,
but weirdly enough, it's really popular. Like if you talk to a lot of Godzilla people, they're like, "Oh yeah, I love Biollante." And I'm like, "Please tell me why." Like not being sarcastic, but like, tell me what it is that you're getting from this movie, and I have yet to hear a rational response.
And it's interesting because like I have the Blu-ray like when it first came out, and I'm looking at the price of the Blu-ray now, and it's like $80.
Yeah,
like,
it's hard to get.
It's crazy. So then after that we hit 91, which is a reintroduction of King Ghidorah.
I love this movie.
Yeah, this was great. This was a great homage to what was before, but the time travel stuff, which was the time travel is completely out of whack, but I love time travel movies. So the way that they did it, going back and replacing and all that, I thought this was a great one. And then Mecha King Ghidorah, oh my God,
I know, right?
That's what I was thinking of when he even said Ghidorah coming back. All I could think of is metal robot, whatever. So,
what do you think of Godzilla's design during this time? Because he did go through various changes throughout the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, he doesn't change a lot through the High C era, and part of that is because the High C era is the first time you actually have continuity. All the Showa stuff, for the most part, is one and done, with little tiny threads that kind of lead forward in some cases. So he changes in the High C era, but not much. If you lined them all up next to each other, you could pick out the little pieces, like he's got thicker legs here or whatever. But because of the continuity, they didn't want to drastically change him for like they did in the Showa era.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the 90s design. Just look more menacing. If that's the right
for sure. Yeah. Well, he was a cartoon character in the 70s, so to bring him into more of a almost essentially like the original, the 54, to go back to kind of an original big tough guy versus the cartoon eyeballs and stuff. Yeah, for sure. It was definitely a change, and it was done purposely for sure.
Yeah. And I know nobody here on the panel probably has a direct answer. I mean, we can't really answer it because none of us are Japanese, but I'm wondering how the Japanese audience, I know us as Americans, how we react to Godzilla and how we feel about him. I wonder what they feel about the character. Tom, have you done research to see like how, what the reaction, to the character of Godzilla?
I haven't done anything to where, I mean, everything I've read is probably similar to everybody else has read. I mean, I haven't gone so deep as to figure out like what are the reactions to the movies when they come out. Like we talk about, hey, I just saw this movie and it sucks. I don't know if that ever happens in Japan. But I mean, I think ultimately the fact that they keep coming tells you that there is at least enough love for the character that even if you pitch a stinker, people will give you the benefit of the doubt and come back for the next one, especially when they're not hyperlinked. You can do Son of Godzilla that's god awful, but then you can do Mecha Godzilla and you can bring people back. I think that was one of the High C era's interesting things, is that the continuity went all the way through the 5 or 6 movies. And I think that was one of the reasons why they succeeded so well, is because you had that. That's the Avengers effect, where it's like, hey, you just saw Captain America, but now you have to go watch Ant-Man. So you knew that at the end of this Godzilla, there was another one coming that was directly related, and then directly related, and then directly related. That was the benefit of the High C era. And really, I think that's where one of the reasons why it's so well received is because it's very different from the Showa era, where everything was one and done.
Okay.
Also, they were really good.
Sure. Yeah, they were good movies.
I thought they were really, some were better than others, but I think they were much more akin to Western fantasy films as well. I mean, they were, I think, a lot more palatable for older audiences, and they brought some really interesting ideas. And also, Shin Godzilla won their equivalent of the Academy Award for Best Picture.
Did it really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely, obviously, I think Japan is very proud of it's funny to me. I see parallels to the James Bond franchise. The James Bond franchise, like in the 60s when it first started, it set trends. I mean, Dr. No, Goldfinger, and From Russia with Love, especially, was a great adaptation of the literary source material, and American audiences, and indeed worldwide audiences. We had the middle class that was sort of born out of the greatest generation of World War II, and the first Bond movies were fairly serious affairs. And then you get into the 70s and they become really goofy. As much as I might like Spy Love Me and Moonraker, they're pretty goofy. And Man with a Golden Gun was playing off the martial arts film craze, and Live and Let Die was more of a blaxploitation movie. And they didn't really, they were no longer trendsetters. They were following trends. And then the 80s were kind of all over the place. And then you get to Timothy Dalton, and then the series ends for like 6 years. There's no, kind of like from 74 to 84, there was no James Bond from 89 to 95. And then we got the Pierce Brosnan era. And it's sort of interesting to see. And now the Daniel Craig thing has a long continuity. So the Daniel Craig era is like a High C era of Godzilla movies, in a way, sort of. So it's
funny. I was just thinking the same thing, because I mean, we're looking at two franchises that are almost around the same age and have just about as many films. Godzilla's like 36 films or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We got the 25th Bond film's coming out someday.
Yeah.
But I mean, two franchises that someone has a favorite Bond, someone has a favorite Godzilla.
Yeah.
And this Godzilla franchise, to me, top kaiju. There's so many different kaijus out there. Is there any other kaiju stuff that's not Godzilla or Pacific Rim that we haven't touched on?
Cloverfield.
Cloverfield?
Yeah, there you go. That's a good call. Cloverfield.
I really like Cloverfield.
I did too. I didn't like the fact I had to really wait a long time to get a full view of the creature.
Right.
Because it was the same as you mentioned before. You open the door and he's gone by. This, he climbs around buildings. He's climbing up on top of buildings. It was the same as Blair Witch kind of filming. And I'm like, okay, guys, come on, just stand still. It's all I was screaming at the screen on that. But Cloverfield, you're right, is probably a kaiju that we haven't mention.
The one thing I would say though is, unlike 2014 Godzilla, the reason that you're at the perspective that you're at the whole time is because it's basically you're seeing stuff from one camera perspective.
Yeah.
And I thought in terms of doing that, it really worked for that particular movie. Although I do think the creature design's a little goofy, but I did like, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in there. I thought there was a lot of cool stuff.
What about the second Cloverfield movie? What was that called? Cloverfield 2? I can't remember.
10 Cloverfield Lane. It was.
There you go.
It wasn't really a kaiju movie because, again, spoiler alert, folks. There's no monster in it. It was the whole Cloverfield thing as a universe is very bizarre because if you watch 10 Cloverfield Lane, at the end you don't get the monster, but you get aliens.
Right.
And then there's the Cloverfield paradox, which is it seems like it's a completely different aspect to the whole universe. So. I
got one for you. I'm sorry for interrupting, Tom, but sometimes I gotta throw things out or it's gone. Okay, that's what when age. Remember this, Darius. When age catches up with you, interrupt everybody. Okay, just do it.
It's already getting there.
The Mist.
Oh yeah,
The Mist. A bunch of kaijus. Good God, man. Of course, interdimensional kaijus, but that still kind of plays in the same realm of, strange creatures from it. Where the hell did these giant creatures come from anyway? And don't tell me they were all hit by radioactive bombs. Rodan, Mothra. Oh my God.
And then earlier you hit on Gareth Edwards' Monsters, which
yes, Monsters.
It's a little bit of were they created radioactively or something like that? I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen that film.
I don't recall. I think most people remember Monsters because it was unique in the way that he filmed it, which is why he got the Godzilla gig. But unfortunately, he took his Monsters tricks and put them in the Godzilla movie, which we didn't need.
Yeah, I did love his Rogue One though. not a but I loved what he did with Rogue One.
And I have to touch on Darius's love here for a minute. I am a big fan of course, the kaijus, and I am a big fan of giant robots. Okay, sure. And Pacific Rim just combined them both together, man. And I was just in freaking heaven watching that movie because I'm literally watching giant robots controlled by humans inside. And then, of course, the kaijus that they have to fight. And it was just absolutely brilliant. The scene where the injured Jaeger is coming on shore to the beach and he just falls down. I mean, how realistic can you get that? That was just awesome.
That whole image was so cool.
Yeah. And you literally hear the footsteps in the distance first, even though he's coming out of the water. I'm like, oh my God, this is how I love it. This is the way it needs to be done, just like this.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Brian. My apologies, buddy. It'll come back. You're young. You're young.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
We were talking about like Power Rangers and stuff like that. If you go back to the actual Japanese Super Sentai, they were like serious compared to.
Oh yeah.
So like people actually.
Died.
Yeah. And
the thing about Super Sentai was that if you watch it nowadays, like I watch it nowadays, it's very kiddish now. But back then, like especially doing something like Jetman, where I think Jetman lost like 2 Rangers, and then there was another team that lost like 2. Like people were dying in these kaiju series. I think Showa Era showed like they really wanted to. They didn't just want to create like kid like content. They wanted to create good story with kid elements and very serious adult tones with kid elements that were like parents can watch it and their kids will watch it. So in regards to like how Godzilla was handled and other kaiju films was handled, it's like some of these were like, I don't know how kid friendly they are, but they definitely wanted to hit multiple target markets, not just one particular demographic. They wanted to try and encompass certain elements that were different type of demographics can watch their movies or just their content in general.
So I'm going to have to say shame on us all because when Brian asked, what else have we not talked about? Anybody remember a giant turtle?
Hey, careful. Now you're on sacred land, buddy boy.
I
Be careful
thought-
what you say about, and you got two
No,
pronunciations there.
I have no. I love Gamera. I love
Yeah,
Gamera. And in
Gamera,
fact,
and that's how I called him, was Gamera. Some people say Gamera, but it's Gamera. Damn
yeah,
it.
it's Gamera, and
No, it's
Arrow Video has a big set of Blu-rays coming out.
Oh no,
next
they
month.
don't. Oh my
And-
God.
Yeah. And
I wanted to
so,
be. I wanted to be 6 years old throughout that entire showing of Gamera because he loved children. Okay, so he might bite me in two, but he loves children. You know.
Yeah, the Gamera movies are great, and they're. I mean, the first one is kind of a Godzilla movie. He's kind of a bad guy and so on. But after that,
Yeah.
he's the one kaiju that has basically always been the hero. He's
Yes,
always
right.
there to save the day. He's always there
Yes.
to beat the monster. He's always there
mean,
to save the children. Yeah.
Anytime that you can fart jet fire, I mean this and rotate at the same time, that is my hero.
Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up.
I remember watching the Gamera movies, especially versus Guiron, the big knife head dude.
Yes, right.
That's the one that was on the heaviest rotation, so it's always the one that's in my head. And then they did a Heisei era, three movies for a Heisei era Gamera,
Which are really good.
I've still only seen the first one.
Oh,
I haven't
they're
even
good.
seen the next two, so I'm really excited to get this set.
I'm gonna have to
especially
get
in
that
Blu-ray.
set myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah,
Oh my,
yeah.
Gamera is the bomb with his
That,
giant
it's
overbite.
next month, I believe, Mark.
What's that, buddy?
I think it comes out next month.
Next month, yeah.
What is next month? August. Okay, so it's not. Oh, good. I'm glad it's not Christmas time gifts.
Yeah,
or whatever.
jump on, see if you can get a pre-order in before it comes out. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's all the movies. It's all the Showa. It's all the.
Oh my
Heisei,
God! There's
and
my
it's-
Saturday.
And it's Gamera the Brave, which is the one that's never been released in
Oh.
America on Blu-ray.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm in heaven with Gamera. I mean, I love Godzilla too, but Gamera, like you said, he was the good guy. He always did it for children. He loves the children. And
Well,
that's
Gamera's
like-
the only other kaiju that has any sort of extensive regular series.
Run, yes.
Kong,
well, wait a minute.
Kong, of course, but
Yeah, okay. And Rodan maybe had 2 or 3, right?
sure. But Gamera has 12, so
Yeah.
no one's really even
Sure.
close to
Yep.
that. I guess Mothra has her original, and she's got her 3 that she did. There's a Gamera or there's a Mothra trilogy that
Right.
came out
Yeah.
in the 90s. So there's those 3 as well. But then she appears in 75% of Godzilla movies too.
But
Yeah, how
Rodan
did-
only had one movie that
Right.
he appears in, is that he headlines,
Right.
Oh, okay. That was the only single one. All right. How
which
do you
sucks.
guys?
I want more Rodan.
Man,
Well, after seeing King of the Monsters and that Rodan, and he's doing barrel rolls and stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, give me some more Rodan for sure.
and Robert, Rodan really damaged you, dude, didn't it? Really?
I loved it. I mean, I loved it, and it was, because one of the things about Star Trek that I don't think ever gets enough credit is Star Trek had a lot of horror elements in it.
Yeah,
Like, if
sure.
you think about Devil in the Dark,
Devil in the Dark, exactly.
then there's episodes like Cat's Paw,
Cat's Paw, yes.
Operation Annihilate.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's a lot of, so I love the fact that Rodan combined horror and giant monsters,
Right.
because it had the literally monsters in a cave that terrorized, at the beginning. And I just, and then by the end, there's these giant monsters dying in the fires of Mount Fuji, and you're loving it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Similar,
man.
similar ending to the War of the Gargantuas. They go out on a fight.
Oh,
and a volcano
that was on
comes
last-
up and swallows them up.
That was on last Saturday, by the way. I think on Comet. War of the Gargantuas, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh my! How could I have been into that when I was a kid?"
Now
This is
here's the thing for War of the Gargantuas. Have you seen what came before? Because War of the Gargantuas is technically a sequel.
To Frankenstein
minute.
Conquers the World.
Correct.
that's right. Frankenstein Conquers the World. Oh
Yeah.
my
First appearance
God!
of Baragon.
But wait a
Yeah.
minute, Frankenstein Conquers the World was what year?
Oh God.
Are we out of the 50s or?
Oh yeah, that's 60s
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
60s for
yeah.
sure. Late 60s probably.
But then War of the Gargantua was probably 68, 69, maybe,
Right.
maybe even
Frankenstein
70.
Conquers the World 65.
There you go.
65. And
Yeah.
War of the Gargantuans was what? Had to be 60, 69.
Something right around there.
Yeah.
late 60s. Yep.
And it's so funny. How do you distinguish between the twins? Hair color.
War of the Gargantuans is 67.
67.
January
Okay.
1st.
What a horrible freaking movie, man. I just wasn't convinced. that could never happen in real life. That's BS, man.
Here's one. How about Gorgo?
Oh my God,
Or
Gorgo.
Reptilicus.
Is that the gorilla?
So Gorgo is that's
I'm
the
sorry.
UK. That's the UK Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
UK Godzilla, yeah. Oh,
And
well.
Reptilicus is Danish.
Oh, Reptilicus. Oh, my
Boy, is that
God.
hard to watch now.
Oh my God, man.
And I think it's what is it Korean? Is it Yongari is Korean?
Yeah.
Yongari, yes.
And
yes.
if Varan the Unbelievable.
Yep.
We didn't talk
Varan
about-
was a great freaking monster.
I
And
don't
what a
think I
terrible
know.
movie. What a
How to
shame.
spell that?
Varan.
This one's Korean. I believe it came out in 06. The Host.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
The
I-
Host.
The Host is great. Although the monster, is it big enough to be a kaiju?
I mean,
It's
still
pretty
kind of-
big. That movie, though, is great. I mean,
The
that's
Host?
legitimately a straight, yeah. It's
Really?
directed by Bong Joon-ho, who directed Parasite, who won the Academy
Oh.
Award. Yeah, The Host, and it's got the effects are done by Weta. It's
Oh,
awesome.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
if you haven't seen
Okay.
The Host, if you guys haven't
I'm-
seen The Host,
I'm tracking it down
It's-
now.
it's awesome. And
Really?
the first 20 minutes are amazing. Amazing. I love the whole movie. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I have not heard of that. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Oh,
I-
Tom, you will love it.
Who has seen Colossal?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Forgot about yeah. I have that
Yeah.
on Blu-ray. I totally forgot about that.
That is a
Oh, well, wait a minute.
strange
Then we
movie.
might as well go with, what's the 50s giant man movie? Colossus?
Oh yeah, the
No.
Colossal Man or something. Yeah.
Something like that.
Uh-huh. Well, Daimajin. Also,
I don't
You
know
guys
that one.
Daimajin.
Daimajin.
There's 3 Daimajin movies. He's basically a giant statue that
Right.
comes to life.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Holy
And then
man.
they made the sequel to King Kong versus Godzilla, King Kong Escapes.
King Kong Escapes. I went to
Yeah.
the theater to see that. I saw King Kong Escapes in the theater. That had to be about 76.
Mecha Kong.
Man, you are old.
Yeah.
I
I was going to say.
It's not strictly a kaiju movie, but it's Manda's first appearance, which is Atrigan, the
Right.
submarine movie.
Yeah, which
Oh.
is awesome. I have a die-cast ship of that.
Hey, wait a minute. The praying mantis has to be a kaiju. You guys remember that? Come on, Robert.
Yeah, and I see the poster.
Yes, exactly. It's
I
the
see
praying mantis.
I can see the poster artwork.
Oh, is
in
that
my-
Oh,
Day of the Trithids?
No, praying mantis
Um,
was a standalone, literally the praying mantis.
Oh, it was
but
called
it was
the
a,
Praying Mantis. Oh,
yes, that had to be a kaiju because that was a giant.
It's the Deadly Mantis.
Oh,
The
is it
dead-
dead?
the
Thank
dead-
you.
1957.
Very good. The deadly mantis. And
The poster is epic. The poster is epic.
it's one of those you buy and you frame it.
Oh, the artwork. This was the day that engulfed the world in terror. If you just look up, just do a Google search for the Deadly Mantis and click on
I
the
just
yellow
did.
poster.
That
Yeah.
poster is pretty dope.
It's
Yeah.
how great is that poster?
The
I mean,
deadly mantis.
come
yes.
on.
Yes. Holy crap, man. And they had tarantula as well.
Tarantula.
Yeah. It had to be a kaiju.
Yeah.
You know, anything bigger than his britches is got to be a kaiju. Yes, that's what I say. You're a kaiju. Your mama.
Hey, I actually have to get going.
I too. I have to go.
Here, so it was great having all you on here. So before we go, where can people find everyone on social media?
You guys can Google me. My name is, of course, in my screen. You guys can Google me and friend me. Let me know who the hell you are, how I met you, because I don't friend just about anybody. But it'd be great if I can, get to you guys too. And if you have Facebook pages or anything like that.
Yep, I'm on Facebook. You guys can look me up on Facebook, Tom Hutchinson. Twitter and Instagram are BDI Comics, the letters BDI. And I write all kinds of stuff, but I did a book a couple of years ago called Kaiju Epic. It's my first giant monster love story to the genre. So I do have a kaiju book if anybody wants one.
Oh, I want to get that.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
Tom,
so
what's the picture in your Facebook? Oh, wait a minute. Is it Top Dog at Freelance?
No, I don't know what my Facebook picture is currently.
That's another Tom Hutchinson. Brian, you know this guy.
Oh,
yeah, because you're a friend of him. Top Dog at Freelance.
Big Dog Inc. Top Dog at Big Dog Inc. I am a freelancer. Yes, that is my my
his picture. He's standing with a redheaded chick.
Oh yes, that's somebody cosplayed one of my characters, so it's a picture with her. Yeah.
Yep, gotcha.
There it is.
So Robert, I know where I can find you, but where can everybody else here can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Burnett RM. Find me on Instagram under my name, or you can find me on my YouTube page, YouTube channel, The Burnett Work. And I do a daily YouTube show called Robservations, the show about something.
Ooh,
and
cool.
You can find me. I'll be on at 2:00, which is why I have to go because I have to set up today's show.
Wait a minute. You're in LA.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm looking at 4 on my clock here.
Yes. I will be on at 2 in 50 minutes.
Gotcha,
do you still go on Campia's show, or?
Well, John took 3 weeks off, and I think it was mostly because I'm on the John Campia show in the mornings on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, but he was just doing sort of open mics because there wasn't a lot of entertainment news over the last month, and even for me, I usually choose some kind of a topic, but then I do a lot of viewer letters and stuff like that. But so I've been able to keep it going. But John's been doing open mics. I heard he's going to start doing the show again. I hope I come back on it because I really love doing it. We cover entertainment news, and it's funny. I didn't get onto YouTube until 5 years ago. I was on Collider Heroes. The late great John Schnepp brought me on to Collider Heroes, and then I was on with John Campia and John Schnepp for 3.5 years, and that was a great time. I really loved doing that, and then I moved over to John's show, and then everybody wanted me to start my own, so I did, and it's been good. It's been.
You have another one too, right? The whining one.
Yes, my girlfriend and I during COVID, she couldn't work because she's getting her master's degree at Art Center, but she's also she had her own salon. She has hair, and she couldn't do hair because of the lockdown. So I said, why don't we just start a YouTube show? And so we just started doing a show called Whining About Movies, where we share a bottle of wine and talk about a film she hasn't seen. And yes, and we just did our 51st episode. I can't believe we've done 51 episodes of the show during quarantine. I mean, I feel my life. If ever you wanted your life to flash before your eyes, it's in slow motion on YouTube. You just keep doing more and more shows, and you tick off the days of your life.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, last night we did, for Fridays, we made it Romantic Friday. So we did Atonement, which I had never seen.
We haven't either.
Yeah, and then we did The Abyss for our 50th show. She had never seen The Abyss, and I showed her the director's cut, the long version, so we did that. And it's fun.
Last night, have you seen Mrs. Peregrine and the Peculiar Children?
I have not.
I never saw it until last night.
Did you love it?
Recommended highly.
We watched Invasion of the Astro Monster for one of our Whining About movies.
Oh my God!
Yeah, she had never seen that, and I said, I took out that Criterion set. I said, we're gonna watch one of my favorite Showa Godzilla movies.
Oh my God!
And that was fun.
What'd you think of that?
She liked it. No, she liked it. I mean, she's pretty open-minded about all these things, and it was fun. It's fun to talk about. That was a fun one to talk about.
Cool. So Darius, I already friended you, Darius.
Yes, I got it.
Okay, cool.
Where can people find you, Darius?
Facebook, Darius McDaniels. Twitter, I'm Darius21. I changed my name a lot.
Running.
Social media and whatnot. I try to keep it consistent with with certain things just because of my memory. But just mostly on my Facebook. I post a lot about Super Sentai, Power Rangers, and whatnot, comic book stuff, because I used to be a reviewer. So I still kind of like, still tapping into the comic book stuff and just like, pop culture in general. So yeah, just facebook.com/Darius McDaniel is mostly where you can find me.
Awesome
Well,
beans.
thank you everyone for joining. Until next week when we talk about remakes and reboots, this has been Reels and Heels.